Peace, greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, aka Mr. Just the Facts. We're gonna get into a little history of Christmas among our people here in the United States of America. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat so far: Lionel Riley, Rob Smith, Vince Jefferson, Jarice Tellis. I see y'all. Hit the like button, share this out, family. We have I'm gonna be a little pedantic tonight. I'm gonna be reading some stuff. So, it's that time of year. It's that time of year. And I've in doing this research, and I want to give a shout out to my brother Grim, because he had put some links in the inbox, and I was able to peruse those, and I was able to make several correlations, which I'm going to get into as this particular stream goes forward. Hit the like button, family. Share this out. Corey the ADOS Vegan, BTP Martyrs in the building. Sister Brianna, FF80OS now, and I see you, fam. Don Thomas, Cynthia Adeyemi, peace. Brian Smith, I see you. Hit the like button, share this out. We're going to have a little discussion tonight and get into some, we're going to get into some things tonight. Just a little bit of history. I think it's good that we revisit a lot of the information pertaining to our people and our plight here, why we took on certain customs, what helped us get through this American experience. And in some aspects, Christmas was one of those, believe it or not, and it was also a part of harsh times as well. So let me see, where do I want to go with this tonight? Tiffanology, Juanita Murray, peace. I see y'all. I want to start off with a little. There's the Freedmen's Christmas Shout, South Carolina, 1863. I want to start off there. Again, family, hit the like button as you come in. Share this out. Let people know that a conversation is in fact going on. If you'd like to donate to the platform, you can utilize the super chat feature. If you'd like to donate via Cash App, the Cash App handle is Be the Power. The Cash App handle is Be the Power. And $ Be the Power, excuse me, or you could become a monthly contributor via Patreon. So this is where I want to go first, family. I want to go with this article first. I thought this was interesting. Like I said, this is going to be one of those pedantic shows tonight, pedantic live streams, I should say. And I'm going to be doing some reading tonight because I think this history is important and that we should know it, as those of us who do celebrate Christmas celebrate it. I don't celebrate it. I was born a 5%er. In fact, I remember one year, my father, shout out to my father, the God of Allah forever. My mother celebrated Christmas. She put up the Christmas tree every year, presents. And my father had came home from prison that year. This had to be around, 82, maybe 83, something like that. And there was no Christmas. There was no Christmas that year. So my mother had like this giant plant. So she was able to put all of our gifts. My father did allow her to wrap the gifts up and put them up under this giant plant that she had, but there was no Christmas that year. We was kind of tight behind that as well. We was kind of tight behind that. So, that's just one of my little Christmas memories. All right, so this is what I want to do. I want to get into this. Freedmen's Christmas Shout, South Carolina, 1863. Now, this is some little known history. Again, shout out to my brother Grimm. That brother is a walking encyclopedia, particularly for this era that we're dealing with, Reconstruction, et cetera, et cetera. His brother's a walking encyclopedia. Let's read. It said William Francis Allen edited the groundbreaking collection, Slave Songs of the United States, 1867. During his wartime work with former slaves on the South Carolina Sea Islands, he recorded numerous valuable observations of the freedmen culture. Now, again, this is, when we're dealing with the freedmen culture, I don't know if during 1863, if this culture or if this excerpt is coming from freedmen or those still enslaved because of the year 1863. I mean, we know that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1861. However, there are some, I think it was 1861, correct me if I'm wrong, there were freemen whose people or family were never slaves in the United States of America. So there's a difference between freemen and freedmen. There's a big difference. So let me read. It says, Allen's journal entry for Christmas 1863 contains a detailed description of former slaves celebrating the holidays with a shout at Allen's school building. Note especially Allen's observation on dance styles and the lists of spirituals performed. We begin our quote after the distribution of presents and the singing of newly introduced Northern songs, followed by several of their own songs, when the freedmen decided to hold the shout. So obviously, this shout was something that was done. Peace, Barn Dog D. Obviously, this shout was something that was a part of the Christmas festival among our people, the newly freed slaves. It probably originated during the time of slavery. What that shout is today, I'm not familiar with it. It's not nothing that was practiced in any of the households that I grew up in, or any of my family who also come from South Carolina on my mother's side and my father's side. So, maybe that's some research that we could get into and see what this shout was about. So let's read this excerpt. December 25th, Friday, 7:30 p.m. I guess that's how they told time then. And I'm guessing 7:30 p.m. meant 7:30. Forthwith, the tree was shoved into a corner and the floor cleared. This shout is a peculiar custom of these people and is well described in that article in the Continental under the palmetto. Mr. Eustace told me today that so far as he knew, and as he is native of South Carolina, it is not only peculiar to these islands, but to some plantations. Perhaps it is of African origin, with Christianity engrafted upon it, just as it was upon the ancient Roman ritual. At any rate, arises from that same strange connection between dancing and religious worship, which was so frequent among the ancients, and which we find in the dervishes, shakers, etc. Those people are very strict about dancing, but will keep up the shout all night. It has a religious significance and apparently a very sincere one, but it is evidently their recreation, just as prayer meetings are the only recreation of some people in the North. They do not have shouts very often, and we're very glad of the excuse to have one in a large open room. We went to see their regular Christmas shout in Peg's house last night. They had a praise meeting first. At last, they cleared the room and began, and the strange sight it was. The room is no more than 10 feet square, with the fire burning on the hearth. On one side of the room is a table, and in front of it stood young Paris Simmons, Billy, and Henry, who served as band. Billy sang, or rather chanted, and the others, quote unquote, based him, as they say. That reminded me of like the doo-wop songs from the early 1900s. Let me read that part again. It says, on one side of the room is a table, and in front of it stood young Paris Simmons, Billy, and Henry, who served as band. Billy sang, or rather chanted, and the others based him, as they say. Again, for me, that dredged up the early doo-wop. While 6 dancers moved around the room in a circle in a sort of shuffle. This is the shout. Some moved the feet backward and forward alternatively, but the best shouters in Jimmy, I was told today, is a great shouter. Keep the feet on the floor and work themselves along over the floor by moving them right and left. It seemed tremendous work for them, and I saw that the most skillful ones moved very easily and quietly. Now, being from New York, we dance house music, right? And those in Chicago and Detroit and in certain Midwest states, they know about, especially the northern Midwest states, they know about house music and the footwork that's needed to dance house music. It is rigorous. So as I'm reading this, I'm thinking about these early traditions and how they line up with our traditions today. Peace, Riri, 80 OS New Jersey in the building. Peace. Since I'm here, one. Lionel Riley said the ring shout. That sounds like the ring dance. I'm not familiar with that. That is something I may have to look up. Growing up in New York City, but all of my family was from the South, so I don't. Maybe it's just not ringing a bell with me. The ring dance or the ring shout. Okay, so let's finish this. It says the shouters seldom sing or make any noise except with their feet, but work their bodies more or less, while the singers clap their hands and stamp their right foot in time. 3 others sat or stood about and joined in the bass. When they had shouted in this way for several minutes, they stopped and walked slowly round while Billy sang a sort of recitative interlude. Then, when he began a new tune, they started off again, and their shouting varied a little according to the tune. In some, they kept along with scarcely any change, and in others, they would have stopped with the jerk at every change in the tune. Shift the foot in advance from right to left or left to right. Presently, Billy joined the shouters, and Henry led the singing. We stayed about half an hour and then came home. Today, I was very glad to see the shouting again, to understand it a little better and catch the words. First, there was a circle of the young people. So I'm guessing what our fam in the chat is saying about this ring shout or this circle is what is being described here. I'm just simply unfamiliar with it. It says, first, there was a circle of the young people. Church members are sometimes unwilling to shout with outsiders. I caught some of the words, which are evidently original. Jesus called and I must go. I cannot stay behind, my Lord, while the bass sing, I must go. Another was, pray a little longer. Jericho, do worry me. While the bass was, oh Lord, yes, my Lord. In singing this, Billy sang very fast, Jericho, 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 etc., while the shouting was rapid and excited. Another, bell do ring. One to go to meeting, bell do ring. One to go to shouting, bass, bell do ring. And here he sang in the same way, heaven bell, so fast that it sounded like humbler, humbler, etc. These two were very fascinating. Another was mournful. Jesus died on the cross, while the bass was minor. Jesus died, and the singer repeated, died, etc., as he did Jericho, only slowly and mournfully. Altogether, it was one of the strangest and most interesting things I had ever saw. So I wanted to read that and share it because I'm not familiar with it. Let me see. Brother Lionel put a link in the chat. Let me see. He says in Edenton, North Carolina, the slaves celebrated Junkanoo similar to Jamaica. All right, this is definitely something that I am extremely ignorant of. So I'm gonna have to look. Oh yeah, I got that link pulled up, Brother Riley. I am definitely going to get into this. All right, so I want to see where I want to go with this right quick. See where. All right, this is where I want to go with this. I want to go to this article. There's nothing festive. No, not this one. Not this one. Hold on. I have several articles pulled up. All right, this is what we're going to go with. This is from theconversation.com, and the name of this is entitled Slave Life's Harsh Reality Are Erased in Christmas Tours of Southern Plantations. So what this thing is breaking down basically is the fact that there are plantations that are still existent today who celebrate Christmas. They decorate these plantations. Some people even go to them to get married, right? Some people go to the plantations to get married. So let's start reading from this point. What's missing? When the Black historian Brandon Bird visited Belle Mead, a mansion in Nashville, Tennessee, for its Christmas tour a few years ago, he was shocked that the slave community and their harsh realities were barely mentioned. Instead, he reported, the tour guide mostly related stories about the white men, women, and children who woke up to Christmas in the mansion's plush bedrooms. Now, we know that this is something that the Europeans here and Americans called white people, white supremacists, have been doing for a long time, trying to erase the legacy of slavery by telling us it was so long ago that we just need to get over it, not understanding or caring to understand that some of our people have latched on to this white supremacist talking point as well, not caring to understand how these things affect us today, these bad, horrible things insofar as slavery and the treatment that we endured. They still affect us till this day. So it's no wonder that people would go to these plantations and find large portions of the history wiped away. It says, by the American Civil War, nearly 4 million slaves in all toiled in the southern states, and about 1 million lived as servants in mansions and as field hands on large plantations with 50 slaves or more. They did almost all the grueling household and field labor that kept these places going, often sleeping and cooking in primitive cabins and working in unhealthy conditions under the threat of the whip. In fact, the historic mansions hosting Christmas tourists never would have been built without the profits generated by slave labor. The Grand Nottoway Plantation and Resort in Louisiana, which traditionally puts on a Christmas event, was constructed just before the Civil War by some 155 slave workers. I wonder if their families get any of the proceeds. Any of the 155 slave workers, their families, their descendants today get any of the proceeds from any of these Christmas events and tours and marriages, etc., that are held at this particular plantation. Fictional tales and memoirs. In researching my 2019 book, Yuletide in Dixie, I discovered that many historic plantation and mansion sites are reluctant to talk about slavery and their Christmas events. This is partly because administrators want to avoid topics that might make paying guests angry or uncomfortable. Yeah, we want that bread. Run us that money. We don't want to talk about the bad stuff that happened in this house. We only want to talk about the good, because that's all we care about is the money. And no, we're not going to give the families of the people that built this place anything. We're not going to give them nothing. It continues. But the omission of Black Southerners from these holiday tales also stems from pervasive myths about slave life at Southern plantations before the Civil War. For a long time, many people got their ideas about slavery at these places from memoirs, novels, and short stories written by white Southerners after the Civil War. These stories, now outrageous for their racial stereotypes, not only justified the institution of slavery, they also made it seem like all enslaved people had fun on the Southern plantation at holiday time, dancing, singing, laughing, and feasting for the holiday season, just as their master did. And this picture, which is the one that I use in the thumbnail, is an illustration that perpetuates the myth that slaves had a wonderful time during Christmas. This sketch was created in 1867. So let me see. What else did I want to read on it? Okay. Whipped and sold on Christmas. I read many documents to find out how slaves actually spent their Christmases. The truth is deeply disturbing. On the one hand, the majority of enslaved people did get some. On the one hand, the majority of enslaved people did get some. They butchered that sentence. The time did get some time off. They have an extra word, them, there, that doesn't belong there, from working during Christmas, as well as feasts and presents. Some got to travel or to get married, privileges that they didn't get at other times of the year. But these privileges could be withdrawn for any reason at all, and many slaves never got them at all. Slavery was a brutal system of forced labor to enrich those same owners. Even over the holiday, masters kept the power to punish slaves. A photo taken during the Civil War shows a man who was whipped at Christmas. His back was covered with scars, showing that when masters punished the people they held in bondage, they also often did so brutally. Now, I'm trying to get the words out about this picture as I'm reading, but everybody should be familiar with this picture right here. This is an infamous picture that is shown in a lot of articles that deals with slavery. There are a lot of memes that have been made using this particular picture. And to know now that this image comes from a Christmas whipping shows the brutality of not just slavery, but the slave master. It shows the brutality of the descendants of those former slave masters today who are police officers and many of our politicians. It continues. There were other cruel forms of punishment. On one South Carolina plantation, a master, angry at an enslaved woman he suspected of miscarrying her pregnancy on purpose, locked her up for the Christmas holiday. Masters sometimes forced enslaved workers to get drunk, even if they did not want to drink, or wrestle with each other on Christmas simply for the amusement of the master's family. See, this is things that happen with our people that we don't know about during Christmas time. This picture comes from the Library of Congress. There's no date attached. It says an African man being inspected for sale into slavery while a white man talks with African slave traders. So that's interesting. You have an image. It has no date, but it's in the Library of Congress. Inspection and sale of a Negro. So you have these Europeans who are conversing in the background with African slave traders, and the European inspecting the slave. We touched on this on maybe 2 live streams ago about, and it could possibly even been the last live stream, where we spoke about places like Benin, where they captured and sold 3 million of our people into bondage, into slavery. All of these things tie in. Christmas doesn't make it any soothing. and this is history that has to be told, escapes and panics over slave rebellions. It is revealing that many enslaved black Southerners also chose Christmas as the time to try to escape to freedom. Despite the difficulties of traveling in cold weather with few supplies, the famous black liberator Harriet Tubman, for example, helped her 3 brothers enslaved in Maryland to escape bondage over Christmas in 1854. Obviously, slaves like the Tubman brothers greatly resented their enslavement, or they would not have agreed to leave. Evidence shows that many slaveholders knew their slaves hated their condition. Although the U.S. never had a major Christmas slave rebellion, Southern whites frequently panicked over frequent rumors that their slaves planned to revolt over the holiday. They armed themselves, conducted extra patrols, banned black people from the streets of cities, and executed or whipped slaves whose behavior they thought was suspicious. Panic over Christmas rebellions took place frequently. They were at times confined to a state, as in Charleston, South Carolina, then a British colony in 1765, or they could spread in the entire American South, as one did in 1856. As I found in my research, Christmas revolt panics continued all the way through the Civil War. Again, this is some of the history that we don't necessarily get during Christmas time. I wanted to come up on here and read some of these, man, because, man, and I'll closed out these links. I should have put those links in the chat. I'm going to put those links back in the chat. I'll pull them back up, but so that you all can read them along. Somebody was asking me where I got them from or what books, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to continue. Like I said, this live stream, rather, I don't like using the word show. This live stream is going to be a little pedantic. I want to read. I just want to get on here and read some of what happened with our people during Christmas time and why we are the way that we are in today's days and times around holiday seasons, and why we have some of the attitudes that we have. So let's get into this next piece. This is from the Constitutional Rights Foundation, and this is going into the Southern Black codes. But I want to get into this part right here. I was reading all of this stuff, and it's just, it's, us enduring what we endured. If the Christian could understand the story of the Christ from the perspective that emphasis is placed on the man that is Jesus, as opposed to the messianic spirit that embodied the man, and how Jesus in the scriptures, whether you're reading, doesn't matter which text you're reading from. I have my own missing 18 years of Jesus that I read, where Jesus looks like me. I have the Quran, the great Quran of Mecca, where Jesus is mentioned, and the biblical narrative. In my little book, we understand that Jesus represents the human will. This area of our life represents a death of sorts. And the Jesus is supposed to represent the resurrection. And this is what we as a collective are supposed to represent. A collective resurrection, because we've suffered a collective death. And slowly but surely, leaders and teachers have been sent to us to help raise us up and awaken us. And slowly but surely, white supremacy has done an excellent job of putting our people right back to sleep. So let's read from this article. It says, the The state legislatures also began to pass laws limiting the freedom of the former slaves. These laws mirrored those of colonial times, which placed severe restrictions on both slaves and emancipated blacks. Neither of these groups could vote, serve on juries, travel freely, or work in occupations of their choice. Even their marriages were outside the law. They couldn't even marry each other. It was illegal to marry here. The white legislators saw little reason not to continue the tradition of unequal treatment of black persons. An editorial in the Macon, Georgia Daily Telegraph reflected the widely held opinion of the white South at this time. Quote, there is such a radical difference in the mental and moral nature of the white and black race that it would be impossible to secure order in a mixed community by the same law, end quote. I got to speak to that. Y'all constantly hear me read from this book called White by Law. I keep it on the desk in front of me. I keep it actually open on that page where the author is citing another author, and in it speaks to how blackness becomes the mirror of whiteness, so that whiteness could, and I'm going to paraphrase and inject my own interpretation here, so that whiteness could be used as the criminal element, as the immoral element, as the nefarious element, as the bad, the evil element. And they can do all of these things and place themselves as gods among men, while the lowly, meek Negro, as we were called in this nation, who exhibited none of these attributes outside of possibly stealing food to try to survive and not starve to death or have his or her family starve to death, was heaped with or had heaped upon him all of the immoral, nefarious, evil, bad things that whiteness practiced and exhibited on a daily basis. So I had to read that, because that quote from out of the Daily Telegraph that said there is such a radical difference in the mental and moral nature of the white and black race that it would be impossible to secure order in a mixed community by the same law. These are things that they just told themselves so that they wouldn't have our people being free and walking around happy. They wanted to see us perpetually oppressed, as some of them still would like to see this day. It continues. White Southerners also feared that if freedmen did not work for white landowners, the agricultural economy of the South would collapse. During the last months of 1865, a rumor spread among freedmen. The federal government was going to grant 40 acres and a mule to every ex-slave family on Christmas Day. Although the federal government had confiscated some Confederate lands and given them to freed slaves, it never planned to do this on a massive scale. Nonetheless, expecting their own plots of land, blacks in large numbers refused to sign work contracts with white landowners for the new year. At the same time, Southern whites passed around their own rumor that blacks would rise in rebellion when the free land failed to appear on Christmas Day. All these economic worries, prejudices, and fears helped produce the first black codes of 1865. These codes consisted of special laws that applied only to black persons. The first black code, enacted by Mississippi, proved harsh and vindictive. South Carolina followed with the code, only slightly less harsh, but more comprehensive in regulating the lives of persons of color. So I'm going to put this link in the chat. I should have put the other ones in the chat as well, but I mean, you know, when we're looking at Christmas time, we have to understand the good, the bad, and the ugly around Christmas time. Shout out to everybody who has just come in. Make sure y'all hit that like button, share the video out. You can use the super chat for any contributions to the platform. Also, you can cash app $BETHEPOWER. as well. And, that article, it goes on to break down civil rights, labor contracts, vagrancy laws, apprenticeship. Let's read apprenticeship, courts, and punishments. Right now, all of this is Christmas based, family. All of this is Christmas based. Apprenticeship. Southern black codes provided another source of labor for white employers. Black orphans and the children of vagrants or other destitute parents. The South Carolina Code authorized courts to apprentice such black children, even against their will, to an employer until age 21 for males and 18 for females. Masters had the right to inflict moderate punishment on their apprentices and to recapture runaways. But the code also required masters to provide food and clothing to their apprentices, teach them a trade, and send them to school. So basically, it was slavery all over again. All over again. And these were laws, these codes that were passed because of fear of Christmas rebellions, courts, crimes, and punishments. South Carolina's Black Code established a racially separate court system from all civil and criminal cases that involved a black plaintiff or defendant. It allowed black witnesses to testify in court, but only in cases affecting, quote, the person or property of a person of color, end quote. Crimes that whites believed freedmen might commit, such as rebellion, arson, burglary, and assaulting a white woman, carried harsh penalties. Most of these crimes carried the death penalty for blacks, but not for whites. Punishments for minor offenses committed by blacks could resist in hiring out or whipping penalties rarely imposed on white lawbreakers. Again, I want to stress the Christmas framework around the implementation of these laws, how this affects us today. Michelle Alexander, in her excellent piece on this very topic that I'm reading, Courts, Crimes, and Punishments, in her book, The New Jim Crow, details, elucidates, shines the light on the fact that whites committing the same crimes basically get off scot-free. Remember, it says crimes that whites believed freedmen might commit, not would actually commit. So the only thing I had to do was go to the court or a lawman and say, I believe that my slave is going to rebel in a few days. He and a group of other slaves have been fraternizing, and I believe that they're going to rebel. Well, this could get you killed or whipped. Maybe the slave master was losing control. He used the law in the same way that a Karen would call the cops on black people because they feel that they can't talk to them a certain type of way. You can't beat them. So they're hoping that the cop comes and shoots and guns them down because that's what they want to see. They don't care anything about that. The woman in New York, the little boy walked by and his book bag brushed up against her flat booty. And she accused the brother, the little kid, of grabbing her flat butt. Called the cops. The little boy scared to death. Scared to death. And the video clearly showed that the book bag bumped up against her flat booty. Now imagine, family, just imagine. My brother Grim has joined. Just imagine had there been no video cameras. Imagine that being in the 60s or the 70s or the early 80s where stores weren't equipped with video cameras. Imagine what would have happened there. Who knows? They probably would have tried to put handcuffs on that little boy and run him through some type of juvenile detention, something. So, this is just some of the things that our people had to go through, man. My brother Grim is on. Brother Grim, did you want to speak to anything that's been shared so far?
Yeah, peace, brother, man. When you talk about that, the only thing, man, that I could always think about for Americans is the Reconstruction period. And the fact that Reconstruction failed. People look at that like it's a snapshot in history, man. But like in some of those articles and stuff that you was talking about, and you was go share with the family in the group or whatever, when all of that stuff turns, when you turn around and look at all of that stuff, man, all of this stuff traced back to the failed era of Reconstruction and the rise, man, of Jim Crow. And people think, they say, oh, that's so long ago. Oh, that was back in the day. That junk has implications. I mean, it's even playing out, man. It's so deep that it's playing out in this COVID thing. It's playing out in this rogue presidency thing. I mean, it has its hands on everything that we dealing with today, man. And until the sin of the failure of Reconstruction is fixed, man, this country, man, will always have this Negro problem, as they say. It'll always it'll never be right, man. And everybody is suffering, both black, white. Everybody is suffering, man. Really, or I should say, not living up to their full potential as a community, as a country, because of the failure, man, of Reconstruction. Now, I'm gonna just say this about the whole Christmas thing. I just want to wish everybody happy holidays, whatever time that you got off from your job and your other vocations or your business to spend with your family. Enjoy it. But just know that, I wanted to speak to the other thing too, man, about these plantation visits, man. For like the people down south that visit these plantations and stuff as a tourist thing. They're real pretty, man, this time of the year, as far as them putting up Christmas decorations and visiting and stuff like that. But just keep in mind that during this time of the year, this was no time of joy for the slaves that was on the plantation. So when you go and you visit those big old antebellum, beautiful Victorian homes in the South or whatever, man, it wasn't no joy going on for the slave on Christmas on them plantations.
Facts. All right, so I want to get into this next article because these because now we're gonna get into New Year's. I'm gonna put that link in the chat. A woman my age said Reconstruction did not fail. It was violently overthrown because it worked too well. Remember the coup in Williamson, North Carolina. Reconstruction did not fail. It was just the opposite. I mean,
yeah, well, I agree with her. I agree with her. When I say fail, when I say fail, I mean exactly what she said in words, brother, man. I meant it was a conspiracy. It was a letdown by the Republican Party. That's just the bottom line. So, the sister is right. It was not only, but I have to add that it wasn't only violently overthrown. It was politically overthrown by how would you say, negligence and neglect, purposeful negligence and neglect on part of the U.S. government and the Republican Party, basically pulling out of the South and letting that thing go down. And remember, we was talking about the Freedmen banks and things of that nature, and basically how the government helped to overthrow and tear down and for all intents and purposes break down the Freedmen banks and bankrupt them. All that stuff tied up. So the sister's correct. So when I say it failed, I mean it's the exact same thing that she's saying.
Definitely, man. I was going to say it's hard to disagree with it because, but you know, that Reconstruction period was, whew, man. What man, which book was this out of? I think it was out of Darity and Kirsten Mullen's book, Dr. Darity and Kirsten Mullen's book, where it says we became when Reconstruction starts, we became the slave of one white person to every white man, or something like that. So whereas, you know, a family may have been enslaved, and there was governance according to that plantation. But during Reconstruction, as you've seen me read with those slave codes, then it became a slavery of sorts to all white men. So it didn't matter what your status was at this time. You know, you could have never owned slaves. These black codes gave you special license to disregard the life of those whom were called Negroes back in those days. So let me pull up this article, and I want to get into New Year's from this article, and then I'm going to pull up another article, and we could have the conversation about it. So this is from, okay, let's pull it up. What was Christmas like for America's enslaved people? This is from the History Channel. So, you know, they got a lot of different takes on this. Some try to paint the rosy picture with the harsh reality. Some of the articles, they just keep it official, and they just touch on the harsh reality, and the things that were good, they note were few and far in between. So I want to read starting from here, where it says, in the 1830s, the large slaveholding states of Alabama, Louisiana, and Arkansas became the first in the United States to declare Christmas a state holiday. It was in these southern states and others during the antebellum period, 1812 through 1861, that many Christmas traditions, giving gifts, singing carols, decorating homes, firmly took hold in American culture. So basically, before the 1830s, this culture that many of us emulate today, that comes from the white Christian South, we have to be honest, this is what the history shows us, Alabama, Louisiana, and Arkansas, right? The culture that we practice today that's called Christmas has its roots here. Culturally, it has its roots here. It says many enslaved workers got their longest break of the year, typically a handful of days, and some were granted the privilege to travel, to see family, or get married. Many received gifts from their owners and enjoyed special foods untasted the rest of the year. But while many, let's talk to that part real quick. This is the time of year where people make their best food, right? Thanksgiving and particularly Christmas. There are some people that look more forward to Christmas meals than they do Thanksgiving meals. Those people that eat pork, they like the ham with the pineapples and the cherries. My mother made a corned beef every Christmas where she used the pineapples and the cherries and a little special coleslaw, et cetera, et cetera. And many of these traditions are American traditions. It says that some were granted privileges to travel to see family or get married. We find this happening today during the Christmas holiday and the Thanksgiving holiday specifically. Many people travel to see family. Again, all of these things have their roots in the American South, particularly for our people. We cherish these moments because of our condition at those times, and we carried that with us. Did you want to speak to any of that, Grim, before I read any more of this?
No, you can go ahead, my brother.
It says, but while many enslaved people partook in some of these holiday pleasures, Christmas time could be treacherous. According to Robert E. May, a professor of history at Purdue University and author of Yuletide in Dixie, Slavery, Christmas, and Southern Memory, owners' fears of rebellion during the season sometimes led to preemptive shows of harsh discipline. So there was a preemptive show. There was, we're going to whip these niggers. Excuse that language. I can't stand that word. But we're going to whip them until, so they'll know not to even try to escape with anybody that's planning on escaping during the holidays. Because this was a time where laws were laxed, where there weren't a lot of people on patrols, et cetera, because people were enjoying this newly minted holiday in the American South that had taken hold by this time. You know, they were enjoying their families. No one was out. Everybody was moving about. This was the best time to escape. It continues. Their buying and selling of workers didn't abate during the holidays, nor did their annual hiring out of enslaved workers, some of whom would be shipped off away from their families on New Year's Day, widely referred to as Heartbreak Day. Still, Christmas afforded enslaved people an annual window of opportunity to challenge the subjugation that shaped their daily lives. Resistance came in many ways, from their assertion of power to give gifts to expressions of religious and cultural independence, to using the relative looseness of holiday celebration and time off to plot escapes. Now, I'm going to put that link in the chat, and I want to get into this other link because there's something important about what was read, and that was the end of the last paragraph, where it says, nor did their annual hiring out of enslaved workers, some of whom would be shipped off away from their families on New Year's Day, widely referred to as Heartbreak Day. So I want to get into this other article here, because this article, and again, I got to give a shout out. I'm glad my brother Grim is here, because he put these articles in the inbox. And I mean, it's just amazing what happened to our people and how we were treated. These people that celebrated the birth, Christmas time was supposed to be the birth of their God, their Savior, white Jesus, who in their text showed great patience and humility and virtue, and had great sayings like, let he without sin cast the first stone, and spoke about faith the size of a mustard seed that would grow into this large, huge plant, et cetera, right? Oh, these people cared nothing about that. In the same way, we see that they do not care about the United States Constitution. They claim to be Americans, claim to live by what's constitutional. However, at every moment, they go against the Constitution just so that they can remain in power. Here we see in this picture a slave auction. This is circa 1830, illustration of a slave auction in America. There's a woman and her child being sold off as white men stand around. In the lower left-hand corner, we see a mother nursing her child, a slave at that time. In the very background, we see a slave being issued corporal punishment by a slave master back there. They said a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I got 1,000 that I can say about this image right here. So let's Let me read this and then we're going to, let me see. I want to make sure that I don't get past that certain point. Let me see. Okay, so here we go. It says Americans are likely to think of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day as a time to celebrate the fresh start that a new year represents. But there is also a troubling side to the holiday's history. In the years before the Civil War, the first day of the new year was often a heartbreaking one for enslaved people in the United States. And I want to add this: whatever day Christmas lands on, exactly 7 days later is New Year. So if it lands on a Monday, that next Monday is New Year's. So think about the fear that our people had within the 7 days of Christmas and New Year's, of being sold off, being broke, their families broken up and going to other slave plantations, which, as was shown and cited in other articles, you couldn't see until a whole year later during Christmas time, sometimes. In the African American community, New Year's Day used to be widely known as Hiring Day or Heartbreak Day. As the African American abolitionist journalist William Cooper Nell described it, because enslaved people spent New Year's Eve waiting, wondering if their owners were going to rent them out to someone else, thus potentially splitting up their families. The renting out of slave labor was a relatively common practice in the antebellum South, and a profitable practice for white slave owners and hirers. Hiring Day was a part of the larger economic cycle in which most debts were collected and settled on New Year's Day, says Alexis McCrossan, an expert on the history of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and a professor of history at Southern Methodist University, who writes about Hiring Day in her forthcoming book, Time's Touchstone: The New Year in American Life. Some enslaved people were put up for auction that day or held under contracts that started in January. These transactions also took place all year long, and contracts could last for different amounts of times. These deals were conducted privately among families, friends, and business contacts, and slaves were handed over in town squares, on courthouse steps, and sometimes simply on the side of a road. According to Divided Mastery, Slave Hiring in the American South by Jonathan D. Martin. Accounts of the cruelty of Hiring Day come from records left by those who secured their freedom, who described spending the day before January 1st, hoping and praying that the hirers would be humane and that their families could stay together. Of all the days in the year, the slaves dread the New Year's Day the worst of any, a slave named Lewis Clark said in an 1842 account. On New Year's Day, we went to the auctioneer's block to be hired to the highest bidder for 1 year, Israel Campbell wrote in a memoir published in 1861 in Philadelphia, in which he describes being hired out three times. Quote, "That's where that saying comes from, that what you do on New Year's Day, you'll be doing all the rest of the year," a former slave known as Sister Harrison said in an interview in 1937. Let me place that link in the inbox. That is a powerful quote because we see how the practices overlap. We see how we have adopted in many senses this European culture of Christmas and worshiping the image of their God, etc., and the festivities that come with it. But in another sense, we see that many people all over the world actually believe that what happens on New Year's Day is going to extend itself through the year. This is something that was started as a slave superstition. and is now carried as cultural in the United States of America. So, Brother Grimm, if you want to come on and add some commentary to that, I'm a
indeed, brother, man. You know, it's just sitting there. I heard somebody in well, I read somebody in the inbox that was basically saying, you know, in so many words, I can't scroll. I'm trying to scroll back to that comment. Um, Sister, I think her name is Cynthia. She said something in regards to uh the basically, man, the trauma, just, you know, just making her suffer, you know, this whole intergenerational trauma. You know, she spoke to something like that. And, you know, as she was typing that, man, I was just feeling the same thing, man. And, you know, my only commentary about that, brother, is that these people, man, know that what they call African American people or black people, man, or Negroes, man, are broken people, man. Don't get that out of your head, that we're not talking about these crazy people. We talking about the intelligentsia, racist, non-racist, man. There's no way that you could see a community of people, right? And we did some great things. I mean, greater than some of the past people from maybe 1,000 years coming up from slavery to get where we are today, man. But you can't look at the dysfunction in African American community and say that there is no problem, right? Or say that it don't need to be addressed, or don't know how to address it and addressing it in a wrong way, man. And you know, reparations is the only, you gotta, they say you can't throw money at every problem, man. You gotta throw money at this problem, man. And I think you were talking earlier. I stepped out, but you were talking earlier, I believe, about the brother, I think it was in Ohio, who was visiting the guests. Were you speaking on that? It was a brother, I think it's a new case in Ohio, where a brother was visiting some friends, and he was waiting for them to get home, and someone called the police on him, and he was coming out of the garage or something like that, and they shot him.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned it, but I know exactly what you're talking about though.
Right. So all of that stuff, man, that's the same stuff that happened on the dark, dirt paved roads of Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, North and South Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas, Texas, Missouri. That's the same stuff that happened, and people, those people gotta know that this is a continued legacy, you know. And the whole thing about Christmas, you know, the one of the articles that you was reading from, I was reading a little bit further on, you know, it was talking about, like, a lot of the slaves, man, saw that day as an opportunity to escape, you know, when basically they had relaxed work schedule because the masters and the overseers were with their family and whatnot, and holiday travels by the slave holders and stuff. And hell yeah, some of our people tried to get away, you know, on that day, you know. So man, that day you know, holds a lot of different meanings, man, for descendants of American slaves, man, to me. And you know, I mean, it even ties into the a lot of the things that Mother Harriet Tubman had did, because you know, a lot of her escape plans for escaped slaves were held during Christmas times, you know. So I mean, man, all of this stuff, man, really touches. It's emotional, man. It really pulls at your
Oh yeah.
heartstrings. And the thing about it, man, is that racism, right? Or I should say, not just racism, because that's a general word. You could be racist against any race. So I'm gonna take that back, and I'm gonna say African American or black inferiority, man, is so ingrained in this culture and really in the world, period. But it's so much ingrained in American society that nobody has offered a full scale reformatory program to correct the ills of the things that not only happened to us during slavery, but throughout Jim Crow, the civil rights era, and the crack era of the late 70s, I mean the early 80s, 90s. No, and they only throw little crumbs at the problem. Nobody wants to come up with, or nobody wants to build a comprehensive program to right the wrongs. And when we point those things to people, and when others point that out to people, they say that the means to fix this problem is either too extreme, radical, or too much,
right.
man. And man, that makes you emotional, man. So they'll throw a little money at a HCBU. They'll throw a little money here. They'll make some symbolic gesture there, man. It's not gonna work, man. And the racial wealth gap is gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. So
we have a question. Hold on. Let me. I'm gonna mute you, Grim. Just unmute. I'm just hearing feedback when I speak. He says, "How do we get right-handed power?" Brother Brian Smith. I don't know exactly what he means by right-handed power, but I'm guessing that has some other meaning, maybe scriptural. I'm not sure. But what is your response to that, Brother Grimm?
yeah, I don't understand the context of the question. How do we get right-handed power?
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, if he could rephrase the question,
Definitely.
that would be great.
But power in this country starts with politics. It starts with politics and it ends with money. It's just as simple as that. And we've never focused on creating our own party. Like I hear a lot of people. I see a lot of people. Some people I respect, some people I don't respect, some people I had respect for and lost respect. Either way, most people are not pushing for us to become one block. On this platform of Be the Power, we've been able to show that African Americans in America are the largest ethnic group here. We're not the minority. And only one group is said to be larger than our group, and that is German Americans. When people get broke down by American, and this is why I respect Noble Drew Ali and what he did, and why I will always call myself a Moorish American, is because we don't have that thing that creates a determination, basically, right? So how do you determine who's black in America? How's that determination rendered? And when you start looking at some of the stuff we talk about here, disaggregating data, meaning African Americans, Nigerian Americans, Liberian Americans, Trinidadian Americans, Cameroonian Americans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these people are considered black. So if you're adding all of these people together, and then you're adding all of the European people together, which is why Prophet Noble Drew Ali used that term. He called them European. He didn't call them white people. These are problematic statements because you have Hispanics. You have certain Hispanic groups who are white. They're considered white. So they pad the numbers of what's called, well, they don't even call themselves the majority. They just use terms like minority or minorities. They don't walk around saying we the majority or the majorities in this nation, because it doesn't make no sense. It just doesn't sound right. And we've accepted this term minority, when in fact, we are the largest ethnic group in the United States of America. We have to push that narrative. We broke down on Be the Power, Diddy's, Puffy's new black party. I can't remember if that's the name of it. I don't know. Oh, but it was nothing but a spinoff of the same black activism, Tamika Mallory, Mike Son, Black Lives Matter type of nonsense that, while providing a voice to certain issues that affect our people, they do nothing to move the needle, particularly towards power. How do we obtain power? Getting a Confederate statue removed is great for an activist, but changing the socio-economic conditions of a people has to be the end goal. And most of these people say nothing about reparations. Nothing. I was on a live stream that was hosted by Diddy's Black Party, and I kept putting reparations. I was spamming. What about reparations? I hear everything but reparations until one of the hosts was forced to say, yeah, reparations. I see y'all in the chat putting reparations. Yeah, bro, that should be the first thing that comes out of your mouth. What are we doing if we're not addressing the socio-economic issues? Like my brother Grimm said not too long ago, you throw money at the problem and it'll be fixed. That's a fact. You throw money at the problem, it'll be fixed. But that's not all that a reparations program entails. Somebody posted in the chat that we need free therapy, and that's a fact. We need therapy. We are a damaged people. We are damaged people. It is what it is. And we have perpetuated that damage because it has become profitable for us. We have to, we have to be honest here. What's gonna sell records now? Brand Nubian style, slow down. You know what I'm saying? Talk about crack and getting people off of crack, or drill music. Catch the op on the block, chop him with a shot. Like that's what's gonna sell right now. All negative. In the Quran, it says, and Satan said, I will make evil fair seeming to them. And that is what we're witnessing right now. We are witnessing the sins of the world becoming acceptable because it is a means by which we can make money. In some instances, it's selling out. Some may not call it that, but that's exactly what it is. Hip hop went from dancing and partying to spreading a message of positivity that reverberated everywhere, to gangster rap coming from the West Coast, until gangster rap being the only form of hip hop that we really know. These same individuals now have to be forced to the table. We can't do the Diddy Black Party thing. We have to become the power. We have to set up our own politics, not based off of some Alicia, what is her name? Alicia Garza, Michelle Colors, I don't even know if I'll be saying these people's name correctly, to be honest with you. That's how insignificant they are to me in the greater scheme of things. In the greater scheme of things, we know what needs to be done. And trying to get our people on board, I don't think it's a difficult task. We just, those of us that have the voice and are serious about reparations, need to put those voices together and move forward so that this thing can become a reality. And I am of the belief, and I believe I can speak for some of my BTP brethren as well, in that forming a political bloc out of our people, to whereas we control all of our votes, at least 85% of our votes, is the only feasible strategy, the only viable strategy, insofar as us receiving some of the things that we demand of our politicians. Period. Brother Grimm. Okay, hold on. Let me address this comment real quick. Let me see. Charlie Jacobs said Reginald Muhammad was on Tamara's channel. Shout out to our sister Tamara Johnson Shirley. Was on Tamara's channel earlier, is reaching out to reparationist organizations to build a joint coalition. I've reached out to Brother Reginald Muhammad. We spoke by phone. He obviously interrogated me. He wanted to know who I was representing, who I was a part of. He was basically waiting for me to say ADOS so he could say, never mind. So I don't know how serious Brother Reginald Muhammad is about reparations. I did go to the website that he provided. I mean, if we can do a coalition, but all of the Pan-Africanist stuff, trying to get America to pay reparations to everybody in the diaspora as opposed to the descendants of the freed slaves in America is futile. I wouldn't waste my time. Personally, I'm not going to waste my time. I'd rather try to build with Ice Cube and people that see this reparations push and a black agenda for our people as something that's doable by us getting on the same page. So I don't know if that Brother Reginald Muhammad is serious. He never reached back to me. We had a phone conversation and he said he was going to call me back in a few days. I never heard from the brother again. So I don't know. That's to be seen. Brother Grimm, you wanted to add anything?
Yeah, peace, brother, man. I just want to thank everybody, man, and that's watching in the chat, man. I'm gonna just listen to you go in, brother, man. I jump in a second if you want me to address something specific.
Definitely. A woman my age says Black Lives Matter, the organization, not the activists, received over $10 billion in donation off the death of black men and is handing it out to BIPOC. Disgusting.
Wow.
For those that don't know what BIPOC means, it means blacks, Indians, and people of color. So this is some new term that is being floated around. These are all slurs to me. Like I said on the last stream, don't call me none of this stuff. Don't call me cisgender. Don't call me BIPOC. Don't even call me a person of color, because I'm not a person of color. To be colored means that I was either painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. And I'm neither of those things. I was born this way from ancestry that date back thousands and thousands and thousands of years who had this same skin complexion or darker. I'm not colored. So, you know, people are in the chat and they're letting it be known that we are grounded in reparations for descendants of persons enslaved in the U.S. You know, Brian Smith said direct payment to ADOS, period. Q Wallace says the Green Party had reparations, but not as an anchor. I looked at the Green Party and I wasn't necessarily feeling them. You was going to say something, Grim?
No, sir.
Yeah, I really wasn't feeling the Green Party. We just need to form our own thing. Speaking of my brother Grim, he's like I said earlier, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge. He put me onto this letter years ago that the head of the Ku Klux Klan, I always say Ku Klux Klan wrote to Elijah Muhammad at that time. And as I was reading that letter, this was in the 60s, family. As I was reading that letter, it was so hard for me to disagree with what this, I believe he was the Grand Wizard at that time. I can't think of his name, but I'll keyword it. I can't find the first page of the letter. It's like it's been scrubbed from the internet. I can only find the second page of the letter. I had it up on my old Moorish website. But one of the things that he was saying, he was like, the black man, you know, of course, he was dissing Islam and Mohammedanism, of course, and how the Negro would never accept it, yada, yada, yada. But one of the things that he said was that you blacks can't do nothing without us white men holding your hand and walking you through it. I thought that was telling. When I look back at Ice Cube's contract for Black America, his addition of Native Americans, and this idea that I've seen in online circles on Twitter, I believe, where including Native Americans into what we're trying to do justice-wise is more palatable to whites who may not take our claims seriously. We have to break that train of thinking because we don't do that train of thinking over here, right? Be the power is exactly what the namesake implies. We don't need to appease anybody. We just need to gather. We need to get on the same page. We need to become politically mature. Those that like to cite Malcolm, he spoke of political maturity. He spoke on that. And while everybody is not going to be political scientists in a day or two, they should feel comfortable, the average man and woman, from the poor to the working poor to the middle class, heck, even the wealthy ones that would see a new political movement sweeping across America, its leaders, and say, I feel comfortable with those people right there. I feel comfortable with those people at the helm. And this is what we are seeking to do at Be the Power. You know, Q Wallace asked a question, and I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna address this question because I think it's, he says, can ADOS just be our own party? Call it what you want to. Now, ADOS, America's Descendants of Slavery, as an organization, I don't know. I can't speak and will never speak for that organization. As a group, meaning the 35 million of us who are America's descendants of slavery, yes, brother, we can be our own party. We can be. And we can call it exactly what we want to call it. Exactly. Because this is what leadership is about. Yo, I'll tell you, I can't wait until I can get from behind this microphone and this camera and be on the streets, going state to state, building up coalition. I can't wait to do it. I just can't wait because this, you know, we need to build our rhetoric up. That's a fact. That's a fact. We need to build our rhetoric up, but we also need to be ready to make the proper moves. We have to be ready to spread this message all over America. All over America. Let me address this question. Let me see. Satra Delry 360 says, someone suggests Project Takeover the Justice Democrats. Say you. Okay. Let's look at the issues that the Justice Democrats is having right now. AOC was supposed to be placed on this commission. Which commission I can't recall at the moment. The seat that she was all but promised was given to someone else, a centrist, or as they call them, moderate centrist, moderate Democrat. Not only was she opposed by the Republicans, she was opposed by the Democrats in her own party, the corporate Democrats, the Obama Democrat is what I call them. I tweeted out, I said, if there's a such thing as a Trump Republican, then do know that there's a such thing as an Obama Democrat. The Obama Democrats are the ones that are pushing out the Pelosi's. We see the brother Jamal Bowman on CNN straight going in on Rahm Emanuel and how horrible he was as a mayor for Chicago. CNN cut the feed. It looked intentional to me. It looked intentional to me. What Trump was able to do by focusing on, what did he call them? The four, what did he call them? That guy is funny. But by tying the Democrats to the ideals, the corporate Obama Democrats to the ideals of the Justice Democrats, like socialism, they were able to gain sway. See, I would never mind using the term socialism or socialists. So I just wouldn't. And this is what happens when you control your own voting bloc. I don't believe that Project Takeover of the Justice Democrats, of the Democrats, I don't believe that that's a viable option. I just don't. I don't believe that Project Takeover of the NAACP, et cetera. I just don't believe that. I believe that building our own institutions and moving from there and working in conjunction with each other will yield us better results. The Hegelian dialectic, I bring it up all the time. I believe that that will yield us better results. I don't believe in the Project Takeover. Not in that sense. I just don't.
Right. And if I could say, brother, man, what ends up happening with the whole Project Takeover thing is that when you get into that stuff, see, those voices on that side have already been well established, through time, through work, through influence and things of that nature. When you start to try a Project Takeover, you have to be careful that you're not taking over yourself. And what I mean by that is that in order to get into those sectors, right, you have to put in a particular body of work. You have to identify with a particular body of ideals, and you have to go along with that stuff. Then you have to start compromising on certain things to get things done. And before you know it, you're not who you are anymore. You're not the pure reparationist. You're not the ADOS advocate or the descendants of American slaves advocate. And sometimes you may or may not, but you may begin to actually lose your original intent and your pure intent and the scope of your mission by trying to take over these bodies. So, like what you mentioned with the NAACP, they already have their own system. They have their own program, and believe it or not, they probably already have their long ingrained system of politics within that body. So you're gonna initiate something new in these particular bodies. It may be rejected. It may be, it may be even delayed a long ass time. Somebody, oh, well, that's good, but let's do this. Oh, it's good, and let's do that. And the reason I'm saying this is because I've seen that stuff happen over and over again. And as far as like I want to speak on the socialism thing. They always use Cuba as an example. Y'all probably spoke to this on other shows, but they always use Cuba as a measuring stick for the failure of socialism, right? Or socialist concepts and ideas. But hell, anybody would fail regardless of the political system if you place 50 freaking years of embargoes on their country and they can't get fresh ideas out of the country and fresh products out of the country. They can't get fresh ideas and fresh products into the country. And then their country collapse or damn near collapse, or they operating on fumes, and you say, see, look what happened over here is socialism, right? And then you talk about a whole bunch of people who jumped on a boat and escaped that stuff and came over here. Well, for the most part, a lot of those people were descendants of elitists anyway, who came over here with the hate in their heart that they were unseated, out of their elitist positions and their elitist positions of power. So basically, whenever you have like a AOC stance, a Bernie Sanders stance, or any type of those stances, they yell socialism is a byword to scare the hell out of people from asking for help from their own government or enacting systems that benefit the majority of the people as opposed to a few. Healthcare being an example. The whole thing about the healthcare system is not so much that they had hiccups in the system, other than the fact that when they put that legislation together, it was the Republicans who put those things inside of the healthcare bill, and then turned around and said, "Oh, God damn it, it ain't working. It's failing." In this, so instead of fixing the system, they want to abolish the system. So they greedy CEO friends with these expensive healthcare programs, plans that nobody can freaking barely afford, can stay in power and continue charging all of this high price for this, high price for treatments, medications. Man, and they got a lot of sick people in this country, a lot of physically sick people in this country. This is my personal opinion. I'm not trying to force this on nobody, as people might curse me out in the inbox. But it should have been over when Bernie Sanders crossed the American border into Canada and bought the same medication for $20 that they're selling over here for $200. That should have been a wrap. And that goes to that whole socialism thing, right? They scared the crap out of people to make them think that the government enacting programs that benefit the majority of people will fail. Think about that. Creating programs that benefit the majority of the people. You say if we do, and these people call themselves Christians, right? Jesus was the biggest socialist there was.
Facts.
Was the biggest socialist there was. The Apostle Paul talking about. Big socialist, so to speak. So they make you think about, hey, if you put all these programs together to help all of these people because they struggling, it's gonna fail. Man, whoo, bro, this country got some issues, man.
Yes, it does, man. I have this article pulled up as you were speaking, brother, because these were the articles that I was seeing. I follow what's going on. I mean, I try to follow what's going on in politics in general. And this is one of those things because I started to notice this civil war really when AOC came in. She became the tipping point. Young progressive, talking that Bernie Sanders talk, more hip to the younger crowd. So they were looking at her as a new Bernie Sanders, basically. She could spread the message further than he could with him being an old white male, her being a young Hispanic woman from New York, et cetera, et cetera. The right immediately attacked her. I mean, it was... people probably wouldn't even know who she was for a while if the right hadn't attacked her immediately. And, she said some things that I definitely agree with. And she said some other things that I vehemently disagree with. When asked about reparations for African Americans, she said, well, what about the Hispanics? Well, my question would have been, well, what about them? And then she would have said what she would have said. And like Malcolm told that brother during that interview in the 60s, well, the Puerto Ricans didn't go through slavery and Jim Crow and segregation and redlining, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We did. We went through all of that. All of that. So this is an article that came out November 5th, 2020. Don't say socialism ever again. Democrats in Congress push back against lefty messaging after disappointing election. So it says moderate Democrats express frustration and at times fury on a House caucus call Thursday that several reporters listened in on, arguing the party should immediately break with progressive messaging like defund the police after disappointing House and Senate results. I don't have to really get in too much into this because we touched on this, but I wanted to bring that up again in response to that question about taking over the Justice Democrats. It's futile, in my opinion. It will be just a futile attempt at doing nothing. We may have, just like the reparations issue with the ADOS movement, right? The ADOS movement has made the reparations topic a conversation. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. Right? That's all it is. It's a conversation. And don't get me wrong, it's a start. But what type of action now do we get behind that? If it becomes, well, this symbolic thing, just say something about reparations and, just to shut them up or try to satisfy them, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, most of that stuff is shown right here in the policies of these people, right? Here we go. Biden leaves reparations out of racial equity plan despite left's call for reform. Now, who's the left? Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, they're more on reparations for our people than an AOC would be, or most of those Justice Democrats, as they're called, the Democratic Socialists, right? So what do they mean? And then you got to factor in Newsweek, which is if I'm not mistaken, is I'm thinking of Newsmax. I was thinking of Newsmax, but to call it despite left's call for reform, that sounds like a Newsmax headline trying to highlight the divide in the party so that the dominant force of the Democratic Party could rein in these leftists. Because if you're not a lefty and you're a Democrat, then what are you, right? Because the original Democrats, the Republicans, the leftists, who had the name in Congress during the time of Reconstruction as the radical Republicans, fought for freedom, for slavery, fought for reparations, 40 acres and a mule, fought for our rights, period. We may have some issues with some of these people and some of their stances. At the end of the day, the policy prescriptions that they were putting forth was for the benefit of our people. Today, whenever we bring up something specifically for Black folk in America, it's, well, we have to do something for all people because the rising tide lifts all boats. Josh does a better Obama than me. I'm horrible at it. I wouldn't try to imitate that dude at all, other than becoming the president of these United States of America. So, I hope I answered your question, sis. Satra Deltria, if I'm saying that correctly. I just believe that we need a new party, period. We just need a new party. We can do it. We can do it. We can gather ourselves up and sweep across this nation, hood to hood. See, and that's for those people that's willing to put in the foot. See, I'll go to all of the hoods in New York City. I'll go to all of the hoods in Chicago. I'll go to all the hoods in Detroit. I'll go to all the hoods in Houston and the hoods in Dallas and the hoods in Texas in general, the hoods in Los Angeles and Compton and in the Bay Area, right in the community centers, and have this very conversation. Because that's all people need. They just need to talk. They need to understand what it is that we're doing and hear it in such a way that it's not going over their head. Just talking plain talk to people. That's what we built for. I could talk the talk of business and politics at a certain level to a high degree if I chose to. But I mean, right now, we just need to build with people. We need to meet people where they are. And that's why I can't wait for this thing to get over. Oh, and Louisiana. Grim, I can't wait to visit Louisiana. But hopefully, my first visit there is based on some joint lecture where we're doing this right here, talking to the community, trying to build up our own political party based on a coalition that where rather it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, Muslim, atheist, if you're Ife, Santeria, just practicing ancestral worship, etc. So none of that matters. None of it mattered. When people were casting ballots for Biden, everybody from every persuasion casted their ballots. And I'm talking about among our people for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We can put together our own thing. Go ahead, Grim.
Yeah, real talk, brother, man. Real talk. And that's the bottom line, man. We just need our new voice. Our own voice. And we need our own voice, man. True and pure, that's not going to be diluted by other things that those trying to take over other things, what that'll entail, a lot of dilution, a lot of compromise or whatever. We just need to come up, kicking ass and chewing bubblegum. Excuse my expression, and that's the only thing, man, that these people go understand, man. I mean, not no takeovers, and things of that nature. Pure voice. Remember, brother, when we was talking about that organization? I keep forgetting the name of the organization, but they had the red banners. Oh, man, they had a big old headquarters down here too. And the Republican Party basically destroyed that, infiltrated that organization and destroyed it because of one instance. What's the name of that organization? Acorn.
Oh, Acorn. Okay.
Acorn.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Basically, man, this whole reparations thing, and I know they got the other reparation organizations and stuff out there, and I don't, I'm not getting into all of that stuff about who's who and slander and what. But the bottom line, man, is that they need a reparations organization as powerful as Acorn was in fighting poverty and stuff like that. And this thing needs to be a real organized, strategized, legally chartered thing, like what you're talking about, hitting the streets, doing lectures. This YouTube thing is good. This Twitter thing is good, man. But ain't nothing, man, like some old-fashioned street beat. Beat the streets, man, and getting this thing together, man. Because talking is one thing, doing is another. When you start affecting these local areas and organizing people, and that's what they see power, and that's what they'll have to address, rather than putting a lot of energy in the putting a lot of energy in the takeover. We just need a strong voice, a centralized message, and just keep pushing forward, instead of, just being, commentary heads, man. And I feel what you're saying, man. Once this COVID thing is under control, man, I know what you gonna do, brother, man.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And even like when we look at Acorn, right? They were able to take Acorn some discrepancies, and I mean, they ran it into the ground. They used their media machine to ground Acorn into dust. I mean, they just, like the end of the Avengers, they just turned them into dust that just blew away, never to be heard from again. That could never happen with us. What? Like, they would never be able to do that with us. First and foremost, we're going to have competent leadership. Like, who's more dirtier than the Republican Party? There's probably not a regime.
Dirtbags.
There's probably not a regime on earth dirtier than the Republican Party. Trump just pardoned a whole bunch of criminals. A whole bunch of criminals. He just pardoned them. These people were convicted of crimes. That loyalists and those related to his family members, like Charles Kushner. This is what I'm saying, family. We gotta build. We have to build. Like, this message has to be pushed, this political unity. Everything else I would never call irrelevant, but insofar as power is concerned, that needs to go to the back burner. We need to put something together that's real, that's headed by real people, real individuals, people that are tested, time tested, people that people know, people that understand, so that we can get this thing moving. Outside of that, we just talking. I'm tired of talking. I promise y'all, I do not need 10,000 viewers on Be the Power. I don't. I'll trade in 10,000 YouTube live viewers for 10,000 members of a new political party any day of the week. Any day. This is just a means to an end, family. At the end of the day, to try to get some of you all who come and frequent this channel to understand that we must become the power. This was a mission that we set out on from day one. I mean, this was something that we been had in the making, you know. But once we seen where the ADOS movement was moving at that time, then naturally, you know, it resonated politically with the message that we have been on. And, you know, those of you who know what happened with the little rift, y'all know what happened. I'm not going to get into none of that. But our purpose was always our purpose. Always. And that was to be the power. This was a name we been came up with. That I came up with. My brother Logic, we debate about who came up. We debate about who came up with the name Be the Power to this day. But he said he came up with it. I was like, all right, man. I came up with it. But anyway, either way, we are BTP, Be the Power. And I mean, you know, I'm just ready to go. I'm learning. I'm still reading a lot of the books, a lot of the materials. I'm following what's going on in the tea leaves. I'm seeing what's happening in politics. I have a better understanding of how the economy works. I have a better understanding of how the Fed works insofar as in the Treasury, insofar as printing money. You know, we understand that America is a sovereign nation that prints its own money. That we don't need taxation. We don't need tax dollars to pay for reparations at all, actually. We don't need that. These are things that I've learned over the past several months, and I've been grateful. I'm grateful. Know that I'm very grateful for my education because I'm a student before I am anything. I am a student first, a student of life in general. So, you know, we gotta get more serious about what we can do, what's feasible, what's viable, what's realistic. Taking over any portions of the Democratic Party is, you know, I don't think that that's viable. I just don't. We need our own. That's it. That's not a tough message. That's not a controversial message. That shouldn't be something that somebody feels that goes against somebody else's message. Like I mentioned this, I think it was on the last live stream or the stream before last. Sister Tamara Johnson Shirley said that when she was traveling to certain parts of Georgia, when she was campaigning and trying to get people to buy into her vision and why they should elect her, they would ask her, oh, wait, are you a Republican? Like, what? I mean, excuse me, are you a Democrat? Like, what does, you know, you know, like what does that have to do with anything? I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for reparations on your behalf. I'm fighting so that our needs could be met in Washington. What does it matter if I'm a Democrat or a Republican? Like, until we can break our people out of that frame of thinking. And that comes with us hitting the streets. That comes with us hitting the streets. That don't come necessarily from us sitting behind our YouTube screens. Like I said, I can't wait to not do this no more. Although I want BTP to grow out into a TYT type of news organization, for me personally, it's the grassroots work that I look forward to. I can't wait to stand in front of my people and bring them this particular message that I spit here. I can't wait for it. Think about it every day, every single day. So, you know, we're approaching 2 hours. I wanted to touch on Christmas. I hope that I was able to provide the family with some insight into how Christmas really began for our people here in the United States of America as slaves. It was harsh. It was brutal. It had some bright spots. Certain things, carried into today. New Year's, 7 days after Christmas. What happens? Our people get sold. Many of our people got sold off, which bred the mindset that what you do on New Year's is going to stick with you for the rest of the year. A superstition came out of the Christmas celebrations. I mean, it's something for us to think about, something for us to research and look into, Brother said organization over everything, and that's a fact. Over everything. That is a fact. That's a fact. Sister Riri said, I can't wait either. Shout out to Sister Riri. That's one of our BTP mods and sister to our BTP brother, Ali Bey. She has her own podcast.
Hey, what's up, Riri?
She has her own podcast popping off as well. Drop the link in the chat, sis, to your podcast. We're gonna grow this thing out. We're gonna make this a news platform eventually, and we are going to control our own narrative. Period. We are going to control our own narrative, man. So, Brother Grimm, did you have anything you want to add before we get up out of here?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say, man, is y'all have a Merry Christmas, man. Happy New Year. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your loved ones. Be safe. Be careful. Mask up. Wash your hands. And just be safe, man. I want to see everybody, man, into this new year, man. And I'm gonna say this, man. Let's love one another and respect. I know sometimes, man, I came on the other day. You come here, you get a little rough or whatever, man, because of what you study and situations, man, people that took in the past.
Josh. No way, man. No way. This dude just come on. Yeah.
Hey. Man.
This dude Josh is crazy. What up, Josh?
Peace.
What's going on?
I saw y'all were still on. I was like, you know what? This is the perfect time to hop on.
This is the perfect time, right as they're about to end it. It should be about 2 hours right now. Let's jump on and extend this thing for another 20, 25 minutes. It was good, bro.
Hey, I didn't want nothing, man. I just wanted to say to the family, man, appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all. I'm talking to y'all brothers right here. Naheem, Grimm, my brother Ali, and Logic. Appreciate y'all for, I think a lot of people don't understand how, it's a commitment to do this. Sometimes we don't always feel like, doing it. Sometimes we sitting on like a whole bunch of like years and years and years of putting in like work, studying and building and sacrificing, and we always trying to figure out, man, what can we do with this? What is there anything going to come from this?
Mm-hmm.
Are we really going to get what we're seeking for our people? And is it worth the ridicule that we get from people, our own people, let alone devils outside of the group? But we said we were going to do this thing as far as this Be the Power platform, and we just stay consistent even when we don't feel like it, even when you're not into it or whatever else is going on. Hey man, we keep the broadcast going week after week. So I just want to say appreciate y'all. Peace to y'all, and also y'all in the chat, the mods, and in the viewership, man. I just appreciate y'all. So I just wanted to get on to say that.
Definitely. Grim, you
Oh
was
yeah, this one thing, man. I got this article I'm about to pull up real quick. Nah, I'm just joking. Actually, you know what I did? I did have one, but I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and chill. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go ahead and chill.
let's chill on that one right now, John.
Yeah,
Let's
we'll go
chill
ahead
on
and chill.
that.
Man, I just wanted to say, man, when we don't talk about this, man, but man, the organization too, man, is a beautiful thing, man. We the United Sons and Daughters of the Freedmen, man. I just wanted to say that, we the United Sons and Daughters of the Freedmen, man, and that's a powerful thing to be, the powerful thing to be a part of and to say, we could talk about being the descendants of whatever king or whatever, man. We are today the United Sons and Daughters of the Freedmen, man, and that comes with a powerful history, hurt, pain, resurrection, victory, man. It's a powerful thing, and our detractors will come on and say, well, y'all saying that y'all slaves, but we're not saying we slaves, man. We saying that we are descendants, man, of people, man, who basically overcame an evil institution, man. And that's the bottom line. And continue to do, regardless of the monkey wrenches thrown in our way, man. What we really need too, man, is for the gatekeepers, man, to stand down, man, and let this thing take form.
Yes, sir.
We gotta run over them gatekeepers, man.
Man, and we still fight. I was telling the bros yesterday. My son. I don't know. I just had the urge. I'm from VA, and I had the urge to hear some of that old Timberland sound from the '90s, and so I just like, you know what? I'm really feeling Aaliyah right now. So I had to put the Aaliyah on, and we started vibing to some Aaliyah, and man, my son was just like in awe. He was just like, he didn't say anything. He was just watching the music. Then he started dancing, and I was like, wow. Then I put on some, hey, y'all want to cancel him. I understand why you want to cancel the brothers, to some extent, but I'm sorry, I can't do it. I had to put on the R. Kelly. I had to put on some R. Kelly.
Hey, I still
believe I can fly.
Yo, I still rock R. Kelly.
Yo, hey, look, I put on I Believe I Can Fly. My son was like, that's a great song. Then then YouTube just started letting some other ballads go on. Like Whitney came on, and Casey and JoJo came on, and a bunch of other joints and Boys to Men. And I was like, my son was just like, and I was just like, yo, I don't care what nobody say. We are the dopest people on the planet.
On the planet.
We are the dopest people on the planet.
It is what it is.
We came and went through hell from the devil, man. It put us through the worst hell, the worst degradation, and we still was able to overcome, you know what I'm saying, and push through and produce something that is unmatched, that nobody's produced on this planet. Like nobody's produced the wealthiest nation with the most sought after culture, the most sought after, like it's crazy. Like everything gets copied and gets put into some type of machine and then and monetized to the highest degree, and we get crumbs. But we still, at the end of the day, gonna have to get the credit for producing just the best of everything.
That's right.
We produce. Whether, I don't care if it was cotton and tobacco. Why y'all couldn't get the cotton and tobacco popping? Why y'all got to get us to do it?
That's right.
You needed us to get the cotton and tobacco and all that. Why y'all couldn't get everything? I don't care what it is. We the dopest people on the planet. So I just want to say that. I don't even think I need to say nothing else, y'all. Peace.
Facts. We are the dopest people on this planet Earth. Make no mistake about it. And the whole world has benefited off of us. And now it's time for us to call in all of these debts, because that's all it is. Everybody owes us. Everybody. We changed music. They emulated the music. I was watching Ma Rainey the other night, and the character played by Chadwick Boseman he came up with a song, and they took his song. What was it, Jelly Roll or something like that? And they had all these whites in the room playing it in their bland vanilla way. I'm just gonna keep it official, not the way he wrote it up and put the tune together. They retuned it so that it could fit their rhythmic whatever. Man, listen, hip hop. We started oh man, somebody said no spoilers. My bad. Damn, and I usually don't do that. My bad. I'm assuming a lot of people seen it. My bad. Right? So
I ain't seen it either yet.
Oh God, I'm just messing it up for everybody. So
man, what's that sister name, man? I don't mean to cut you. What's that sister name? She said, man, without us, man, this place would be another boring ass England, man. What's that sister name?
Whoever she is, she right about that. I said, whoever she is, she right about that.
Yeah, what's her name? Well, man, her name's on the tip of my tongue. I know somebody know in the chat, man. What's that sister name? She passed away, I think maybe a couple of years ago. But she said, man, without us, man, this place would be another boring England, you know?
That's right. We wrote the soundtrack to America. A lot of the songs that you see in a lot of these movies came straight from Motown. They were byproducts of Muddy Waters, and you know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. Like, yo, we are the dopest people on the planet Earth. We are the dopest tribe, point blank, period. And we gotta push that. People gotta know our dopeness don't come from building pyramids or spear chucking or setting up colleges and universities as Moors, and our dopeness comes from surviving the hellfire, the crucible that is the United States of America, that forges people like us, that even through it all, life gave us lemons. Man, how that saying goes, life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Man, we made lemonade with some chopped up mint. Like
lemon chest pie.
Right.
we did some we worked some wonders with that lemon.
Right.
We worked wonders with them lemons. Made it taste good. And it tasted so good that everybody else was like, well, let me get a scoop of that.
Right.
Let's market it. Let's market and sell this and forget about the people who created it. You see? Now, we need to promote ourselves as what we are, the dopest tribe on the planet Earth. It's time for us to start practicing our own tribalism, fam. Point blank, period.
Facts. And I just wanted to say too, brother, I mean, it you know, it's not just music. You know, I mean, half the stuff that we eat has been influenced by the quote unquote slave diet, you know. I mean, it's just everything, even this American vernacular. People always talk about you know, the so-called Ebonics is what they was trying to call it back then. But way before that, we even affected the dialect of the slave master. And there's this book called Africanisms in America. And maybe we can come on the show and talk about that. But it talk about the specific things that the descendants of American slaves were able to retain from their original culture, right? And come here and basically spice up the culture of American people where everybody want to come in. Another example of that too is like now breakdancing, something that ADOS people came up with in New York, right? And it spread all over the world. Now, you know, black people didn't hit that and quit it. We didn't quit it. Now, they got people all over Asia still breakdancing. right?
That's right.
That's new to them.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they just admitted breakdancing into the Olympics as
That's
an
right.
Olympic
That's
sport.
right. That's
You
right.
follow what I'm saying? And shit, black people
Crazy.
probably didn't forgot how to break dance for the most part. You follow what I'm saying? And they still rocking with that. And they just had over and over and over again. And that's not even to mention the intellectual influence that we've had on this country through inventions, and not through just inventions, but the improvement of inventions that propelled us all the way into the 21st century. You know, just time after and metaphysically, right? Metaphysically, the influence of our morals upon this culture. The concept of mercy, having mercy on individuals, the concept of sacrifice, that was something that was given to them by the slaves. I'm done, man. I'm getting
Yo, hey, look, I was into this book earlier today, and it's a book that you know, many of you may be familiar with and maybe have already read, but I had to go back through it. How when affirmative action was white. Yo, y'all got to get into that joint. Yeah, that joint heavy. That joint is heavy. That joint is heavy. I was into it earlier, and I was just, you know, man, he broke down some things, man, and I don't know, Naheem, if you want me to go into what I was talking about earlier, but
Go
you
ahead.
know,
Go ahead.
just real quick, man. I'm not gonna get into the other piece, but I'm just gonna get it. You know, hey, you had it right there with you, so you knew I was gonna hit. You knew I was gonna say something. Yeah, man.
It's always on this desk, bro. But go ahead, bro.
So yeah, I'm just saying, like, you know, to see like what we contributed as far as making the rest of the world understand, I mean, in the country, but and then influencing the rest of the world, that it needs to be you know, a discussion, or needs to be a rectification of how a country can expect soldiers to go and fight. This is just one part of the book. How the expectations of a country to expect its soldiers to go and fight an enemy abroad when its own military and its own country is treating them like the enemy, you know. And it was taught in that book. It talked about, you know, when affirmative action was essentially talking about, because when you hear affirmative action, most of the time we always associate it with black folks getting something, but we don't understand how white folks was really given everything. And then it wasn't until it was our turn to get something that there was extreme pushback. And all I know is in the military, you know, you had people basically saying that their experience during the World War II days, that they felt like they were slaves. They weren't given opportunity for advancement. They weren't given opportunity for to get on any prominent places in the military. And every time when they would get they would kind of rank up or whatever and position themselves to where they're supposed to be advanced, they would get regimented out. And how you could be fighting Adolf Hitler, but then the German soldiers, the German prisoners, would actually get better treatment than you. And how they would tell the French and other European military forces, hey, don't be so, you know, cordial to these black folks. Don't talk to them around. Don't treat them the same way like when they're around the white officers, because they might get too many ideas, like something might be about to change for them. And it was stuff like, you know, you could only work you can only do certain tasks, like clean up behind white folks, and, you know, take the trash out and dig ditches and all that kind of stuff. And that was, I'm just, my grandfather, I remember my grandfather he was in the Navy at first, but he got out. He said the racism was too terrible. And I think he got back in the Army after he got back in the military, in the Army after the war. I believe some laws had changed and under Truman, and he went in the Korea War. He was in Vietnam, so he was in World War II, Korea and Vietnam. But the racism was just ridiculous in the beginning, and I just say that to say, like, we overcame all of that, and we made the rest of the world see, like, that you need to fight. We encourage the rest of the world to actually have a civil rights battle, you know. In man, we just the dopest people, man. We just the dopest people. So we gonna get some more into that book later on a future program, because it's too heavy to not touch back on. But I can't get into no more tonight.
Definitely. This is the book Brother Grimm mentioned earlier. Africanisms in American Culture. I'm about to order this joint, and this is one of those where we need to like really look at how certain things, if you go back and watch the beginning of tonight's stream, and they was breaking down the shout. Like I said, I wasn't familiar with it. Several people in the chat were familiar with it. They were calling it the ring shout during Christmas time in the early 1800s among our people. And one of the things that the writer, the observer who was writing said was they don't know if these traditions that they're doing come from Africa because they were peculiar and they weren't necessarily something that was done on all of the plantations, but something that was only done on a few, plantations across the South. So, this is definitely something we need to look into. Africanisms in American culture. And I think having this discussion with the frame of mind that we have now, understanding our Americanism in a way that we could interpret it differently than just trying to say, see, we Africans, and this happened, and if it wasn't because of this, this would have happened, and if it wasn't because of that, as opposed to how we were just saying it, that we just the dopest tribe on the whole planet, point blank period, where we were able to take traditions that we brought with us from other lands and create, things like spitting on a broom, don't sweep my feet. Like a lot of that stuff comes from West Africa. Don't spit on my, don't sweep my feet. I spit on the broom. Throw some salt over some left shoulder, I think it is. Like all of these things come from West African cultures. They come from West Africa.
Right.
And for those that know the story about the broom, and this is based on Rudolph Bilal Ware, who wrote the book The Walking Quran, where he spent his time in West Africa writing the book, where he said that the reason why the broom became synonymous with bad luck was because it stayed in dirty areas. And once Islam got into West Africa, the stories of the jinn in Islam, they're called disembodied spirits. Some are good, some are bad, and they're called the jinn. It is said that the bad jinn stayed in the dirty places, and they would usually be in brooms, and some equate that with the witch's broom, et cetera, et cetera. So if you swept over a person's foot, you could be cursing them with the spirit of a disembodied evil jinn, et cetera. Like it's a bunch of stuff. I wonder if that book touches on that, but we're gonna get into some of those things, definitely.
Right. And I think this will be good to go over, and a lot of that stuff that you was talking about will be good to go over too, because I know we will go do a show, I think it was do ADOS or African Americans have a culture? Because a lot of people say that we don't have a culture, and then a lot of people are seeking for a culture, outside of their culture. So basically, I want to read a paragraph off that book that you just said, because I don't want to prolong the time, but in the description that's in there,
Hey, y'all gotta stay on the stream, man. You never know. We're gonna come through a defier at the end, you know? Never know who's gonna pop up.
No, Josh gonna pop up. Wait,
yeah.
before you do that, Grim, let me pull this comment up. Nuke said, how about the superstition that a man needs to be first to come through the door on New Year's Day to have good luck for the year? Now, remember, I was reading earlier the history of New Year's, of Nuke. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but I'm gonna put that link in the chat again, and let me just read what was said, because that too, those traditions come from slavery. So it says, one year, as a matter of fact, let's pull it up on the screen real quick. This dude Josh that messed up the whole timeline of what we supposed to be getting up over here. It says, on New Year's Day, we went to the auctioneer's block to be hired to the highest bidder for 1 year. So what's going on now is that during New Year's, a lot of our people would get sold off. This became a tradition. Israel Campbell wrote in a memoir published in 1861 in Philadelphia, in which he describes being hired out 3 times. That's where the saying comes from that what you do on New Year's Day, you'll be doing all the rest of the year. A former slave known as Sister Harrison said in an interview in 1937, we so dope as a people that we started that tradition that says a man must walk through the door, or that you got to kiss somebody on New Year's, or whatever you're doing on New Year's. Make sure you have a couple dollars in your pocket so that you'll have money for the rest of the new year. We started that even during our worst times, and not just American culture and society, but the world is benefiting off of our dopeness as a tribe. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Grim.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, brother man, that in that book there is a article called "The African Heritage of White America" by John Phillips, and in the description it talks about how because there's a new edition, and they were saying how it's been basically revised to add more instances of African cultural survivals, not just in Black America, but in white America, because a lot of these things, man, they basically picked up from us on the plantations and even after the plantations. And I mean that I was gonna go into something else, but I'm gonna stand down, brother man, because I know we've been on for a while.
Oh, all right, definitely. Well, I mean, this turned out to be a good, powerful discussion. Y'all know how we give it up on Be the Power. Definitely want to thank my brother Grim for coming through. It's definitely good to have you on more frequent, bro. You already know. You BTP. Brother Josh, of course, with his pop-ups at the end. It is what it is. You already know. But let me see. Somebody said, let me pull this up before I get off here. Somebody said, my mother and grandmother were very superstitious. Don't split a pole, break a mirror, bring 7 years bad luck, throw salt over your shoulder. Now, the mirror part and splitting the pole, that may be the Americanism. I think something about being hung, like don't walk past that tree, or such and such was hung by that tree. It's been a while since I've heard certain explanations on why. I've never got into this mirror being 7 years of bad luck. I don't think I've ever researched that. I might do that right after we get off, actually. But again,
a lot of that has its roots, man, in our magical culture. I don't want to get off, but don't discount the magic in those sayings, man. You know, we use the word superstition, man, but those people over there, when they came over here, they were powerful. They lost a lot, but we were so powerful that we re-energized some of the African systems in a system of magic, in a system of mystery that they began to call hoodoo, that's probably just as much and probably more powerful than the original magical systems that was over there. I don't want to get too deep into that, but it is what it is.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so I want to, say happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy yourself, enjoy your family. Don't, for my conscious people, don't be too hard on our family that celebrate the holidays. Sometimes we just do that stuff so we can sound deep and be and seem like we're separate and we're so woke. At the end of the day, when you realize, as I've read earlier, that for our people who were enslaved, it was the only time that some of them got to actually see their family, then we can't take that for granted. We should honor that fact. You don't have to celebrate Christmas to enjoy family, right? You don't have to celebrate Christmas to buy a gift for somebody, because maybe you hadn't gotten somebody in the family a gift all year, or it's been a while. I mean, like, this is a part of America and Americanism. Noble Drew Ali founded the first Islamic organization in the United States of America. And one of the things that he did all the way in the early 1920s was, as the headline read, give toys to Asiatic children, as he called us. So you had this Islamic prophet that started this Islamic organization that taught a unique form of Islam, but still used the money of the Moorish Science Temple of America to donate toys to poor children. Like, this is what Americanism is. So I want to leave y'all with the motto of the platform, which is, don't just fight the power, become the power, and then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.
I am a reparationist.
I am a reparationist.